The question is on passage of the bill. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is adopted. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
On that, I request the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
The last vote of the day on final passage of a bill that would expand hunting, fishing, and shooting on federal land. It would also allow hunters to import polar bears killed before May 2008, when the species was listed as endangered. Politico is reporting that Representative John Mica accused the White House today of keeping quiet about the excessive spending by General Services Administration officials for a 2010 conference in Las Vegas. On CNN, the Florida Republican said, quote, "People from the White House knew about it, did nothing, kept it quiet until just a few days ago when the statement was released by the president condemning that act." You can see today's 5-hour hearing with Chairman Mica in our overnight programming on C-SPAN 2 and at cspan.org. And the investigation continues tomorrow when the Senate Environment Committee will meet about GSA mismanagement. We'll have that live on C-SPAN 3 at 10 a.m. Eastern.
vote, the yeas are 274 and the nays are 146. The bill is passed. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Utah seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to have my name removed as a co-sponsor to H.R. 3288.
Without objection. The chair will entertain 1-minute requests. Purpose does the gentlelady from North Carolina seek recognition?
Seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, Mr. Speaker.
Without objection. The House will be in order. The House will be in order.
Mr. Speaker, the March employment report continues to show us that the federal government has not been helping to create jobs in our economy. A Wall Street Journal editorial from April 9th highlighted a few examples from the report. Here is one extremely startling statistic. The labor force participation rate, or the share of civilian population that is working, dropped again to 63.8%. In March 2009, a month after the $800 billion stimulus passed Congress, the labor participation rate was nearly 2 percentage points higher at 65.6%. This is a prime example that throwing the money of hard-working taxpayers that the federal government takes from them at a problem will not solve it. We need real solutions that will stimulate our proven economic engine, small businesses. That's why I support the Small Business Tax Cut Act that will help 22 million hard-working small businesses retain and create more jobs. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
Mr. Speaker, request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to bring attention to H.R. 1959, the Medicare Orthotics and Prosthetics Improvements Act. This legislation has been designed to improve the quality of orthotic and prosthetic care and reduce fraudulent payments for orthotic and prosthetic services under Medicare. This legislation would require the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services to reimburse only those providers who have been accredited or licensed in orthotics and prosthetics. The legislation would also require CMS to report to Congress on its enforcement efforts to reduce fraud and abuse. Fraud and abuse contributes not only to rising costs, but it also harms patients, particularly when medically necessary devices are arbitrarily provided or without qualified providers. Mr. Speaker, we need to collectively look at ways to create savings by combating waste, fraud, and abuse in the Medicare system. This legislation will enhance patient care and ensure that Medicare fraud is addressed, particularly when the fiscal solvency of the Medicare program is in question. And I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, it's party time at the General Services Administration. The good times rolled in Las Vegas, where the GSA spent over $800,000 of tax money on a conference for 300 people. Now we learned that back in 2010, the GSA employees escaped their Marble Palace in Washington, D.C., and jetted off to Sin City for a taxpayer-funded high-dollar boondoggle. This so-called conference included a $31,000 reception, fancy awards, food, wine, lavish suites with bubbling hot tubs, clowns, swanky parties, iPod giveaways, and even a mind reader. This kind of lavish spending is exactly why Americans don't trust the government with their money. But what happened in Vegas just didn't stay in Vegas. A GSA whistleblower snitched off the bureaucrats' gone wild bunch. Now GSA officials are folding their cards, cashing in their chips, and resigning. The day of reckoning has come for those who played poker with the people's money. Public servants should not be public serpents. These government bureaucrats should pay out of their own pockets the taxpayer money they squandered in Las Vegas. And that's just the way it is.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Texas rise? Without objection.
Speaker, thank you for your courtesies. I rise because I truly believe we can do better. I join my colleague from Texas to speak and raise the question of what was the GSA, the General Service Administration, thinking. There are a lot of good workers, and we should not attribute to them bad acts. But it was such poor judgment. $800,000 to be spent recklessly on party hardy. But I also want to raise the question of the contracts that the GSA sends out in the instance of the stimulus dollars. My federal building that has been rehabbed under the stimulus monies to create jobs. And we can't get the contractor, Gilbane, to address the question of diversity in workforce or diversity in contractors. What a terrible shame. There's been some hard work and some attention, but not the hard press that should come about when you seek fairness. Mr. Speaker, I also want to mention the fact that I'm supporting Mr. Courtney's bill of Connecticut because it is a shame to double, triple the interest rates on loans that college students need to provide for their education. And finally, I want to say that NASA has sent the Discovery to the Smithsonian. I want a shuttle in Houston, and we're never giving up until we get it. We are the historic home for the shuttles. I yield back.
Are there further one-minute requests? The chair lays before the House the following personal request.
Leave of absence requested for Mr. Marino of Pennsylvania for Monday, April 16th, today and the balance of the week.
Without objection, the request is granted. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5th, 2011, the gentlelady from Connecticut, Ms. DeLauro, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I claim the time for tonight's Democratic special order. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In tonight's Democratic special order, we will be highlighting the severe and immoral cuts made to anti-hunger and nutrition programs in the House Republican budget. Right now, millions of American families and children are suffering from food insecurity. As the map here clearly shows, food hardship is a national tragedy. It is present in each and every congressional district. The districts that are highlighted in pink and in red have the most food hardships, while the districts in yellow are not far behind. Districts highlighted in blue have the lowest food hardship, but the national average is that nearly 1 in 5 Americans struggles with food hardship. Simply put, they are at risk of going hungry. According to a study done by the Center for Budget Policy and Priorities, the Republican budget, composed by Chairman Paul Ryan and endorsed by presidential candidate Mitt Romney, would, and I quote, impose extraordinary cuts in programs that serve as a lifeline for our nation's poorest and our most vulnerable citizens. Not the least of these are America's critical anti-hunger initiatives, like food stamps and the Women, Infants, and Children, or WIC program, all of which the Ryan Republican budget threatens to slash by as much as 19%. That means, for example, that over 8 million men, women, and children could be cut from food stamps, and 2.5 million pregnant and postpartum women, infants, and children may be slashed from the WIC program. The Ryan budget slashes these anti-hunger initiatives while preserving subsidies for big oil, tax breaks for the wealthiest Americans. It is a reverse Robin Hood budget that, in the words of Robert Greenstein, the head of the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities, would, and I quote, likely produce the largest redistribution of income from the bottom to the top in modern U.S. history, and likely increase poverty and inequality more than any other budget in recent times, and possibly in the nation's history. As many religious and ethical observers have noted this week, the decisions made in this budget are antithetical to our basic moral values. Last Friday, 60 Catholic leaders and theologians wrote a letter to Chairman Ryan arguing that his budget was, quote, morally indefensible and betrays Catholic principles of solidarity, just taxation, and a commitment to the common good. A budget that turns its back on the hungry, the elderly, and the sick, while giving more tax breaks to the wealthiest few, can't be justified in Christian terms, end quote. This Ryan Republican budget is particularly cruel when you consider the scale of need in the current economy. When 13 million are unemployed, 1 in 6 are living below the official poverty line. As another group of Christian leaders, the Circle of Protection, has urged, Congress should, and I quote, give moral priority to programs that protect the life and the dignity of poor and vulnerable people in these difficult times. Our anti-hunger initiatives, like food stamps and WIC, are just such programs. Tonight, I'm proud to be joined by my colleagues. We will discuss the profound impact of the Ryan-Romney Republican budget will have on these programs. And with that, I am so pleased to ask my colleague from California, Mr. Farr, who is the ranking member of the Agricultural Appropriations Subcommittee, to continue our dialogue for this evening.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I call you Chair because you were Chair when I was on the committee, and I always respect your leadership in this field. As was stated, I'm ranking member of the House Appropriations Agriculture Committee, and that is responsible for the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Food and Drug Administration. The entire budgets of those administrations are bigger than the budget of all of California. It's a very important program. And the U.S. Department of Agriculture is responsible for food policy. Most of our food policy in the United States is about health care, is about feeding people and assisting those who don't have adequate access to fresh fruits and vegetables through creation of farmers markets and things like that. And I'm here tonight because I'm deeply disturbed by the attention and sort of the media satisfaction that some are getting when they hear about the Ryan budget cut, squeeze, and trim. And I want to talk tonight a little bit about not only to the families that receive the benefits, but to the farmers who grow the food in this country. The Ryan budget is one you ought to look before you leap. Because if you look at it in detail, you will find that it has a lot to do with knowing about the price of everything and the cost of everything, but very little to knowing about the value of what these programs are all about. Look, food in America is very important. And we wouldn't be having all these health care debates and issues if it weren't for the issues of health care. Health care begins with food. If you're going to grow healthy people, it has to do with what they eat, and we also know it has to do with the exercise that they participate in. Of about a $100 billion budget, $65 billion of that is in food and nutrition. It's about feeding people. We feed a lot of people in the government. We certainly feed everybody in the military. We feed people in public institutions. We feed children in schools. We also give families a choice of what they want to buy with the old food stamp program, now known as the SNAP program, Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. And in my district, 1 out of every 5 families is receiving this assistance. And what do they do with that? They can buy, because we produce so much fresh fruits and vegetables, a much healthier diet than they would have otherwise. And indeed, if we're going to prevent illness in America, we've got to keep people healthy. Who grows this food? Who produces this food? It's the farmers of America. They don't give it away. We buy it from them. A huge percentage of the income to farmers in this country comes from the food they produce for our institutional feeding and for our health care programs. The Ryan budget devastates that. He cuts, squeezes, and trims the farmers in this country, the growers, the people that create the food security in America. So look before you leap. This budget, it does a lot of more harm than good. And frankly, this supplemental nutritional program is a very good program. We even have spouses and children of military families that are receiving this, because in some locations the pay isn't great enough to be able to give them all of the nutritional foods that they need. So if we're going to grow a healthy America, we've got to keep this program, and we've got to avoid falling in love with the Ryan budget, which will do everything but create a healthier, safer, sounder, and more fiscally capable of government. I urge a defeat of that budget and a support of the American farmers. Thank you for your time, and I yield back.
Thank you, gentleman from California. And as this is, I said, an issue that is coast to coast, I'd like to recognize our colleague from Massachusetts, someone who has been an unbelievable champion of eliminating hunger in the United States, Jim McGovern from Massachusetts.
Well, thank you. I want to thank my colleague from Connecticut for her passion and for her leadership on this issue, and for reminding us all of a terrible truth, and that is there is not a single community in the United States of America that is hunger-free, that there are millions of our fellow citizens, men, women, and children, of every age and every background you can imagine, who are hungry or who are food insecure. They don't have enough to eat, can't put a nutritious meal on the table for their families. They go without meals on a regular basis. This is happening in the United States of America, the richest country on this planet. And every one of us, Democrats and Republicans alike, should be ashamed of that fact. I tell people all the time that hunger is a political condition. We have the food. We have this incredible natural resource in this country that we're able to produce enough food to be able to feed our population. We have this incredible agricultural communities, wonderful farmers from coast to coast who can grow our food. And yet millions of our citizens go without. We have the food, we have the infrastructure, we know what to do, we have everything but the political will to eradicate hunger in America. Now look, we all agree that we have a problem with our debt and we need to get our budgets under control. But it's hard to believe that the first place the Republicans are looking to balance the budget are on the backs of the poor and the most vulnerable in this country, on the backs of people who are hungry. Because tomorrow in the Agriculture Committee, following in line with the Ryan budget, the Republican leadership is going to ask that the Agriculture Committee cut $33 billion out of the SNAP program. That's how they're going to balance the budget. First thing out of the box, going after the SNAP program, a program that has worked to keep millions of people not only out of hunger but out of poverty. And I'd like to ask unanimous consent to put in the record an article that appeared in the New York Times talking about how the SNAP program has prevented millions of Americans from going into poverty.
So ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I also want to take on a myth that some of my Republican friends have been propagating, that somehow the SNAP program is a wasteful program. I've heard over and over and over again that the amount we've spent on SNAP has risen over the last decade. It has, in part because we've gone through a terrible economic crisis. More and more of our fellow citizens have fallen into poverty, have had to rely on SNAP. CBO tells us that they expect what we spend on SNAP to go down as the economy gets better. And this is a social safety net. This is a program that provides protection for people when they hit difficult economic times. So that is why that spending has increased. It has nothing to do with fraud or waste or abuse. In fact, the GAO and the USDA have reported time and time again that SNAP is one of the most efficiently run programs in the federal government, less than 3% error rate. And that includes people who get underpaid what they're entitled to. I dare anybody here to find me a program with the Pentagon that has such a low error rate in terms of the utilization of taxpayer money. Mr. Speaker, the bottom line is this. What we're talking about here is not just a program, is not just numbers. We're talking about people. We're talking about our neighbors. And we're talking about not just people who are unemployed. We're talking about working people. Millions of working families benefit from SNAP. They're out there working, trying to make ends meet, but they don't earn enough. So because of that, we have this program called SNAP to help them get by and to put nutritious food on the table for their children. Mr. Speaker, we can talk all we want about our budgetary problems. I want to close with this. You know, people say to me, well, we can't afford to spend any more on hunger programs because, you know, things are tough and the budgets need to be tight. But I would counter, Mr. Speaker, by saying we can't afford not to. There is a cost to hunger in America, and that cost we all pay for. Avoidable health care costs, lost productivity in the workplace, children who go to school without enough to eat can't learn in school. That all adds up. That is a huge cost of billions and billions of dollars that we all have to pay. And that doesn't even count what we invest in programs like SNAP and WIC and other programs designed to provide nutrition and food for our fellow citizens. So I would say to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, the battle against hunger has historically been a bipartisan one. We have been able to come together, Republicans and Democrats, and be able to stand together to support programs that provide a circle of protection for our most vulnerable citizens. And all of a sudden, you know, my Republican colleagues and some of the presidential candidates are using hunger as a wedge issue. Well, I'm going to say, you know, calling President Obama the food stamp president. Well, I'm proud that in this country we care about our fellow citizens, especially when they fall on hard times. And I urge my colleagues, especially on the Republican side, to stand up against your leadership and to stand with us and stand with people who are in need. If government is not there for the neediest, then I'm not sure what good government is. Mitt Romney doesn't need government. He's a multi-millionaire. Donald Trump doesn't need government. But there are millions of our fellow citizens who, through no fault of their own, find themselves in a difficult economic situation who rely on these programs. It is beyond comprehension to me that tomorrow the Republicans want to cut $33 billion out of SNAP. With all the places they can look for savings, they're going after programs to help the most vulnerable. That is unacceptable and unconscionable, and I hope that a majority in this House stand up strongly against that. I thank my colleague for yielding me the time.
I want to thank my colleague. I want to thank him for his eloquence. He makes the comment that these are not just statistics about the people who are being hurt. The fact of the matter is, last week in my district, during our district break, I did an event on hunger and in our community. And there I had the head of the Connecticut Food Bank, the woman who heads up the End Hunger Connecticut organization, and a young woman whose name was Susan Voss from Branford, Connecticut. She stood up and with tears in her eyes talked about her circumstances, out of a job, as someone who was a former a pension advisor, a human resources director, who is now unemployed, cannot find a job. She has 3 boys, 18, 14, and 10 years old. They eat, she stood there crying, 1 meal a day. If we cut back on food stamps, and because she is now not eligible, she can't get them because her unemployment benefits take her over the mark. So she relies on the Connecticut Food Bank. And when the food stamps are cut, the food banks don't get the emergency assistance program funding. So her ability to feed her family will continue to drop. It's wrong. It's immoral in a land that has plenty, and we are bountiful with food in this nation. And I'm so delighted that our colleague Jackie Speier from California has joined us tonight for this conversation.
I thank my colleague from Connecticut who says it better than any of us, and with such great fervor and passion. You know, there are times here when I am elated, and there are times here when I'm sick to my stomach. And tonight is one of those times when I am sick to my stomach. I am embarrassed for this body. I'm embarrassed that the Republicans want to stuff polar bears and bring them back to this country as trophies for their hunters, but they do not want to stuff the bellies of poor kids in our country. There is something fundamentally wrong. And I say that with a great deal of remorse, really. 1 in 7 Americans now is in poverty and needs to be part of the SNAP program. You know, I think it's really important for us to say it over and over again. This program is not filled with fraud. This program is one of the best programs that we run in the government, where the error rate and the fraud is less than 3%. Now, I took the food stamp challenge last fall, and I got to tell you that it was a humbling experience. And for every one of my colleagues who want to cut the food stamp program by $33 billion, I challenge them to live on the equivalent of food stamps for just 5 days. I did it for 5 days, $4.50. There were no lattes in my diet. There were no Big Macs in my diet. There was no sushi in my diet. My diet consisted of canned tuna, eggs, 1 head of lettuce, and tomatoes for 5 days, and a can of instant coffee from the dollar store. That's how I survived. And at the end of 5 days, I thought to myself, I just did this for 5 days. How about the family that needs to do this day in, day out, month after month? And what we don't say often enough on this issue is that you are only eligible for the SNAP program if you are a family of 4 making less than $22,000 a year. If you make more than $22,000 a year, you are not eligible. And your only place you can go to is the food banks. So if we really are going to be a country that thinks about the poorest among us, we cannot reduce this program. We cannot say to those who are just making it, who are making less than $22,000 as a family of 4, that we're not going to help you put food into the bellies of your kids. And I say to my Republican colleagues, don't do this. And if you are, in fact, going to vote for this budget, then you take that food stamp challenge for 5 days. You see what it's like, and then vote for it. I thank my colleague, and I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady, and your words are poignant. And if anybody would like to do this, they really should walk in people's shoes and understand what it's about. When the American people say that they don't believe that Congress understands what their lives are about, in this instance, you bear it out. Thank you. Someone who we are deeply going to miss in the next session of this Congress. There hasn't been a greater champion for women and their families in the House of Representatives than our colleague from California, Congresswoman Woolsey.
I thank the Congresswoman from Connecticut for this special order and for those kind words. Thank you very much. So let me see. Do I have this right? Am I getting it? My colleagues on the other side of the aisle think it's just fine for the wealthiest Americans to avoid their fair share of the tax burden, that it's fine for a millionaire to pay a lower federal tax rate than his secretary. So tell me who they believe should make with less in order to close the budget deficit. Just who do they want to sacrifice? Oh, of course, those Americans who are barely getting by, who can't afford life's basic necessities without support from the federal government. Mr. Speaker, to convert SNAP into a block grant program and cut nutrition assistance would cut a giant hole in the social safety network. Actually, the SNAP program is a smart investment in Americans who need help the most. It stimulates the economy, it increases worker productivity, it's good for our children's development and academic performance. At this very moment, when a harsh economy is threatening the security of so many families, we should be increasing these investments. We shouldn't be standing here talking about scaling them back. You know, Mr. Speaker, you probably don't know. I know what it's like to be working and still not earn enough to put food on the table. I was a single mother. It was 45 years ago. I had 3 small children. They were 1, 3, and 5 years old. Their dad was ill. He abandoned us. I went back to work to support my family. In fact, I had to lie about my marital status and about my child care arrangements just to get a job. But remember, that was 40 years ago. But my salary was not enough to provide for the 4 of us. So, to help my paycheck cover the basic needs of my family, I went on public assistance, kept on working, and that was how I could make ends meet. But without food stamps, we never could have made ends meet. As I said, my children were 1, 3, and 5 years old. They had needs. Eventually, we got through the rough patch, and my children grew up to be healthy, successful adults. They're amazing, by the way. But I don't know what we would have done or how we would have survived without that help. In fact, isn't that what America is about? When our fellow citizens fall on hard times, don't we pitch in to help them? Well, that's not what the Republican philosophy is. It's quite different than that. I believe they believe every man and woman on their own is on their own and should be fending for themselves. Millionaires and billionaires deserve the special breaks that they don't need, and more hardship for Americans who are suffering enough already is just what they have to do when they happen not to be very wealthy or in need. It's appalling and it's shameful. Mr. Speaker, you don't need to have my personal experience. Nobody needs to. I didn't have to do the food stamp test for 5 days. I know what it's like to live on food stamps. But we, as Americans, as members of Congress, have to fight with everything that we have to protect the nutrition programs that we have in this country, because families in America depend on it. Thank you, and I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady for her words and for her telling about her personal experience. And I'd like to recognize the Vice Chair of our Democratic Caucus, the Honorable Javier Becerra of California, which, by the way, has a over 19% food hardship rate.
I thank the gentlelady from Connecticut, my good friend Rosa DeLauro, for not just this evening, but for the years of work that she has done in committee, for her district, and simply in Congress as being one of the champions of not just children and families who are in need, but the fight to make sure that all these families have an opportunity to be or to have access to real nutrition, not just food, but real nutrition, because there were days when ketchup was called a vegetable, and some people made the fight to make sure that nutrition really meant good food, so that if we were going to help Americans, as we want to as good Americans, help our fellow Americans, then let's be sure we're doing it so that they end up healthy Americans as well. So we're here to talk about the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP. SNAP is the acronym. But really what we're here to talk about is the fact that in America, children still go to bed hungry. It's hard to believe, but that's the way it is for too many families in our country. Now, the numbers are staggering. They're staggering because of the Bush recession, which left so many Americans in a place they'd never been before. And in fact, you had to go back some 70, 80 years to find a situation similar when we saw the Great Depression in America. We went from somewhere in the mid-20s, some 26 million Americans who qualified for SNAP assistance, to over 45 million, around 45 million families during the height of this Great Recession who qualified for benefits. Most of those folks who qualified included families with children or seniors or persons with disabilities. It should come as no surprise. But what's really disheartening is to see how many Americans live in extreme poverty, a life that most of us would not recognize. When we talk about extreme poverty, we're talking about Americans who are living on less than $2 a day. The number of Americans who were living on less than $2 a day doubled during the Bush recession. The number of poor children who were in extreme poverty doubled during the Bush recession. Most of the people we're talking about, as my colleagues have said earlier, are living on less than $22,000 a year as a family of four. Those in extreme poverty, obviously far less. An individual, not a family, but just an individual, we're talking about someone who would have to have an income of $11,000 or less to be able to qualify for any assistance with the SNAP program. What probably makes it most difficult for many of us here in Congress, but for most Americans, to really grapple with this issue of food insecurity and children in America going to sleep hungry, is the fact that this Congress is taking on legislation which would actually provide tax cuts to millionaires and billionaires at this very moment that we speak about food insecurity. And so it is difficult to comprehend how we could say to Americans today that are working hard but earning very little and trying to figure out how they keep their kids from going to sleep hungry at night, that we still have the money to provide tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires, but we can't figure out a way to continue a great program called SNAP that relies on our farmers to grow this food and then make some of it available at a discounted rate to American families who are having a tough time. This is all about values. This is all about talking about the American family. It's all about whether we believe in the better days still to come for our country. I happen to be someone who grew up in a very tiny house, about 600 square foot home with my three sisters. My father got about a 6th grade education. My mother came from Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico when she married my father at the age of 18. They came to Sacramento, California with only the money they had in their pockets. They never once had to ask for assistance. They worked very hard. They were fortunate that they always found a way to make ends meet. I never had the Converse or the Keds or the Levi's jeans. My first bike was the bike that my friend was willing to sell to my father and me because he had just gotten a new one. But I never went to sleep hungry. And so I will tell you right now, it's a different thing to experience something where the thing you want most before you go to sleep is a bite to eat. Too many of our kids are upset that they didn't get to watch that television program or didn't get to play on the computer very much at night. There's still too many American children who are concerned that when they go to bed, they wish they had something else in their stomach. I believe America has the moral fiber to say we're going to deal with this problem. And I thank the gentlelady from Connecticut for once again making the fight, because the reality is we can figure out a way to help millionaires and billionaires continue to be successful and create the next wave of wealthy and successful Americans. At the same time, we should be able to figure out a way to make sure that the SNAP program is there for Americans who, through no fault of their own, find themselves without work, through no fault of their own, are trying to figure out how they will let their child go to bed with a full stomach. And if we do this the right way, will get it solved. I sat on the Bowles-Simpson Commission of a year and a half ago, which found a way to make $4 trillion in savings in our budget. It did not touch the SNAP program. I sat on the Super Committee, which was supposed to also fashion a budget deficit reduction deal. And that task force was also going to come up with a deal that would not have touched the SNAP program. We can certainly do far better than what we see in the House Republican budget, which is going after the SNAP program. And I encourage all of my colleagues to stand up, not just for the SNAP program, but for Americans today, because there are some families that are trying to figure out how they could keep their children tonight from going to bed hungry. And so I thank the gentlelady from Connecticut for all she has done for so long to champion this issue for America's families. And I yield back the balance of my time.
I thank the gentleman, and I think one of the most important things that you commented on tonight was this: the number of U.S. households living below the World Bank measure of severe poverty in developing nations. That means they're living on less than $2 a day per person. At the start of 2011, we had 1.4 million households, 2.8 million children. That's 800,000 households that are living on $2 a day, and we have colleagues in this institution that want to take food out of the mouths of those children.
Some people don't believe that that's the case. That is America.
That is. With that, I would just like to say a thank you to our colleague from New Jersey, Congressman Holt, and ask him to join our conversation this evening.
I thank my friend from Connecticut. I thank Mr. Becerra for his heartfelt and very moving remarks, and Ms. Spear from California. Look at this. Look at this map. 46 million Americans relied on SNAP. More than 9 million others relied on the supplemental WIC, Women's, Infants, and Children's Food Assistance. In New Jersey, my home state, more than 1 million residents rely on SNAP benefits to keep food on the tables. And the budget, the Republican Ryan budget endorsed by Mitt Romney, would shred our social safety net while cutting taxes for the wealthy. It would cut food stamps, as these are generally known, by $133 billion over 10 years. The authors of this, or anyone who voted for it, should walk a little bit in those shoes. I've walked in the shoes. More specifically, I've walked down the supermarket aisle with beneficiaries, with people who work in the food assistance programs, with food bank representatives. And how does it go? Well, you can't buy that. No, you can't afford that. Oh, Mommy, can I have this? No, we're going to have to put that back on the shelf. $31.50 a week. Nobody's doing this to have a little taste of luxury. And yet we have people come to the floor here on the House and say, before any of these millions of people get this assistance, they should have drug tests or means tests. I call them suspicion tests. Somehow they're trying to rip us off. No, these are not welfare queens. Look, the average recipient is on these benefits for less than a year. More than half of them go to households where the income is below half the poverty line. The poverty line is low enough, but half of these recipients are at half that rate. Nearly 75% of SNAP participants are in families with children. And about half are working. These are working families trying to make it. Is anybody who voted for this budget suggesting that the millionaires who might get an extra $100,000 on average submit to a drug test, submit to a means test? Are we suspicious of them? How about the executives of the oil companies getting billions of dollars of benefits in this? We're going to subject them to drug tests, means tests, show that they're deserving. My friend from Connecticut, Ms. DeLauro, already mentioned the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. They wrote, "As pastors and teachers, we remind Congress that these, meaning the budget decisions, are economic, political, and moral choices with human consequences. Please, respectfully, they urge, reject any efforts to reduce funds or restructure programs in ways that harm struggling families and people living in poverty." I thank my colleagues so much for shedding this bright light on this heartbreaking subject.
It is a heartbreaking subject, and when you think about in that budget where we talk on average, it's one number is $150,000 in a tax break to the wealthiest people in the nation, or $187,000. They don't worry what they're picking up at the grocery store. They're eating well. Their kids are eating well. Their grandkids are eating well, as ours are in this institution. But it's the people that we represent who are in difficulty, and they need to know to look to us to help them when it is so tough out there economically. This program is working in the way that it should. I thank the gentleman, and someone who knows what is going on really in the heartland of our country, where they have suffered severe economic depression, and that's in the state of Ohio. And let me welcome to this conversation our colleague, Congresswoman Fudge.
I thank the gentlelady so much, and I thank you for your passion on this subject. Mr. Speaker, there is a cold and cruel war being waged on the poor and hungry in America. I stand today with my colleagues as a voice for the more than 46 million Americans who depend on the food stamp program. I cannot and I will not stand by as my Republican colleagues attempt to balance the budget on the backs of these Americans. Yesterday, the House Agriculture Committee unveiled the Reconciliation Act of 2012. The drafters of this legislation could have proposed cuts to any program within the Agriculture Committee's jurisdiction. Yet they decided to satisfy reconciliation targets by cutting only one program, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, better known as SNAP. The proposal would cut more than $33 billion from SNAP over 10 years. Now, some may try to make you believe these cuts only apply to administrative costs, or they will say that the proposal is an attempt to reduce fraud or waste. They are misleading the public, Mr. Speaker. A majority of the cuts will come from benefits. These cuts will take food out of our seniors' refrigerators and food from the mouths of babies. Nearly half of all SNAP participants are children. The Republican proposal would not only affect children being fed at home, oh no, that would probably be bad enough, but this proposal goes further. The Congressional Budget Office predicts this proposal would prevent more than 280,000 children from receiving free meals in school. A school lunch is the only meal many poor children have every day. Millions of children already go to school hungry, Mr. Speaker. Now my Republican colleagues want to exacerbate the problem. I wonder, what did children do to deserve these proposed cuts? Of all the programs that could be cut, why attempt to balance the budget on the backs of school children? In Ohio, more than 1.5 million people depend on the SNAP program. These are our neighbors and our friends who live in rural, suburban, and urban Ohio. SNAP is a powerful anti-poverty program that has helped make our economy stronger. SNAP is the safety net for millions of people who find themselves unemployed for the first time in their lives. Without SNAP benefits, the disabled would suffer. Without SNAP benefits, seniors would be forced to make the choice between food or a roof over their heads. Without SNAP, children would go hungry. The hungry and the poor and the most vulnerable people cannot afford these cuts. They cannot pay all of our bills, Mr. Speaker, by themselves. I yield back.
I thank the gentlewoman and also recognize the gentleman from Ohio who as well understands what the effects of this recent recession has been to his community, his state, and the people that he represents. Mr. Ryan.
And I thank the gentlelady, and I'm glad I had have the opportunity to follow the gentlelady from Cleveland, because my district is just south of her district, and as you can see from the map of Ohio, there is severe poverty and food insecurity in the northeastern part of Ohio, but all the way down, as you can see, all the way into the south. And the SNAP program is one program that we're highlighting here tonight. But I think it's important for us to recognize how this fits into the context of an overall budget that also cuts the Medicaid program by a third. And you think about the stress with, A, the SNAP program, if you're utilizing it. But now what is that family going to do if there's a third of the Medicaid budget is cut, and early childhood is cut, and Pell Grants are cut, and student loan rates go up, and all the way down the line, we're talking about putting a huge squeeze on the poorest people in our society when we only have 300 or 400 million people, and we're trying to compete with 1.4 billion people in China, 1.3 or 4 billion people in India. How are we going to be a competitive country? That's the question that we have to ask here. If you can't even get enough food in a kid's belly before they go to school. And so we need to look at this in the context of what are the investments we need to make in order to be a successful country, period. And we've heard a lot of amazing stories here tonight, heart-wrenching stories of people who ended up being members of Congress because of some of these programs. And who's the next generation of leadership? And are we going to invest in them, or are we going to say you're on your own? And we have now on the other side, Mr. Speaker, one of the nominee of a major political party in the United States of America saying, I'm not concerned about the poor, and making light of us asking people with the Buffett rule to maybe pay a little bit more. Well, you know what? They say, oh, that's not that much money. It's only 11 hours of government spending and blah, blah, blah. You know what? That Buffett rule could help put food in people's belly. The 175,000 people in my congressional district in northeast Ohio that are living in poverty, half of those kids, that Buffett rule would help pay for the SNAP program. Is it insignificant now? Yield back the balance of my time.
I thank the gentleman. It's, my God, what we could do if we had the will to do it, and that's what this is about. It's a